It was a stormy night, and my wedding night with the man I stole from my best friend. The rain poured heavily outside, yet amidst the downpour, I could still hear my friend's screams as she was being gang raped. She called out my name, desperately seeking help, but I callously ignored her cries. I knew that I was the one behind this sinister plan against her. Satisfaction spread across my face as I realized she would forever be out of my way, allowing me to fully enjoy my marriage. I happily reveled in the night with the man who was once hers. I jolted awake, drenched in sweat. Beside me, my best friend Cora lay snuggled up like a baby. Quietly, I slid out from under the covers and tiptoed out of the bedroom and into the bathroom. Switching on the cold water, I stepped beneath its icy stream. The chill of the water provided relief for my anxiety stemming from the dream I had just experienced. Once I cleaned up, I stepped out of the shower, feeling fresh and much better, and was ready to tackle the day. I went into the kitchen and smelled pancakes. As I entered the kitchen, I found my aunt sitting on the dining chair distantly in thoughts. "Aunt," I slowly called her. She responded with a hum. "You look distraught. You okay?" I asked as I sat down next to her. Before she could reply, Cora's loud voice interrupted. "Hello, good morning, everybody." I sighed, looking at my friend yawning and stretching. At the sight of my best friend, the dream popped back in my head. I exclaimed, my lips a little wobbly, "Come have breakfast and then go back to your husband." Both of them turned to look at me and spoke simultaneously, saying, "Again?" I nodded in agreement. "Is that why you want me to go to my husband so badly?" Cora asked, her mouth full of pancakes. "Because I'm not going back. If you're worried that your dream might come true, don't stress about it, honey. My soon-to-be ex-husband isn't someone worth treasuring." I signed and shook my head, unable to believe her. My aunt gave me a sympathetic look, to which Elle responded, "Aunt, you know I hate that look." "I'm sorry, honey, but this matter is getting worse, and you're losing weight because of it." "I agree," Cora added. My aunt held my hands in hers, saying, "It's been years, and you keep having the same recurring dream. Why don't you go to dream interpreters and figure out its meaning? I'll give you the address." Just as I was about to reply to her concern, my friend beat me to it and said that I never and will never visit one, no matter how skilled the necromancers or dream interpreters are. "Aunt, don't you know your niece? She doesn't believe in that kind of stuff." "But why, Keilah?" "There's nothing wrong with trying other than getting thin just because of a dream. You keep insisting that it's only a dream, but it's actually taking a toll on you. Honey, I'm worried about you. Can't you give it a try? There's this really talented dream interpreter that you should check out. Please." "Keilah, honey, please do it for my sake." "All right, Aunt, I'll go because you pleaded, but there's one condition. When I return, you have to let me take you to the hospital for a checkup." My aunt nodded in agreement. "All right then, you can send me her address. I'll go after my 3 part-time jobs." Once I cleaned up the kitchen and some light housework, I catched a bus to my first part-time job. I still don't get it. The Keilah I know would never accept visiting a necromancer. Cora texted me on my way to work. "It's a win-to-win, Cora. I get to do what she wants, and she gets to do what I want." I texted back, "Girlfriend, do you really want me to go back to my husband?" "I can do it, and try all my best to make my marriage work if divorcing Ethan really bothers you." Cora wrote back, and for a moment, I hesitated about how to respond to her. Cora has been not only my best friend, but also like a sister to me during difficult times. It would be incredibly cruel to force her back into a marriage that ended a long time ago, all because of a simple dream. Well, this dream really unsettles me because whenever I have it, I see my own face among those women. It scares me because it feels so vivid and real. Do you really think I would want that? I love you, Cora, and all I want is to see you happy. Your happiness is important to me. We both know that there is no happiness in your marriage. So whatever decision you make, whether it's divorcing Ethan or anything else that makes you happy, I will always support you. I texted back, "Let's talk when I get home. I've arrived at work." Kisses. As the evening approached, I finished my work for the day. The weather was pleasant, so I decided to take a stroll around the streets before heading to the sorcerer my aunt had mentioned. I texted my aunt, informing her that I would be running a bit late. "No problem, honey. Take your time. Who knows, you might even meet someone special and start dating. That's one of my top wishes for you." I rolled my eyes. As I was about to reply to her text, someone calling the name Athena interrupted me. I looked away from my phone and saw an old woman standing across the road, struggling with multiple grocery bags in each hand. She called Athena's name again while scanning around as if searching for someone. I looked around for the person she's trying to reach, but everyone else seemed too busy with their own matters. I got a little confused. Suddenly, the old woman dropped her bags and sat down on her haunches, hugging her knees like a child while calling out for Athena's name. I realized that she must be lost and no one was paying attention to her. I crossed over to her to offer my assistance. "Ma'am, are you all right?" I asked, sinking down to her level. However, instead of responding, she continued crying and calling out for Athena. "Grandmother, are you all right? Do you need help? If you allow me, I can assist you in finding..." Before I could finish my sentence, she interrupted me with a sudden hug, causing both of us to fall. When she finally calmed down, she stood up and extended a hand to help me up too. I began to speak, but she interrupted me once more. "Let's go home before your son loses control," she said, grabbing my hands and flashing a smile. Then she snapped her fingers 3 times. Her face furrowed in concern as she looked up at me. "This is not good. My magic has vanished," she uttered. "This woman's head doesn't seem to be working well." I thought to myself and decided to be patient with her. I forced a smile and asked her if she would like me to take her home. "Yes, but how are we going to go back? We can't go by taxi. Your son will notice." "Okay." "So, how did you get here?" I asked. She raised her hands, showing me her palms with a big smile, and said, "Did you forget? I'm a witch. I used my magic." I chuckled. "Are you sure we should use a taxi? Aren't you worried about your son's temper if he finds out we left the pack house and came to the human side? So she left the house without anyone's knowledge," I thought. "Of course I'm not worried about him. I'll explain everything to him and he'll understand," I assured her as I carried the bags. "Now, shall we go?" I said. She hesitated, expressing fear. "Please, let's leave before it gets dark. I have another witch to meet." I whispered the last sentence to myself. When we hailed a taxi, I politely requested that she give the driver her home address. Thankfully, she complied without hesitation. The journey was long, and it made me anxious. As we traveled through the dense forest, a magnificent mansion emerged behind high walls. I breathed a sigh of relief, yet also felt a sense of fear being so far from town and my home. "Grandmother, look, we've arrived," I said awkwardly, pointing at the enormous gate. When she didn't respond, worry crept in that she might have taken us to the wrong address. Thankfully, she stepped out of the car with some bags and urged me to follow her. I paid the cab fare and asked the driver to wait for me. She walked towards the small gate and knocked on it lightly. The gate was opened, and I gathered all the grocery bags and hurriedly made my way over. As I approached the small gate, I heard women's worried voices questioning the old woman about her decision to go out alone. "Alpha is on his way here. Let's get you inside before he arrives," they said, their voices filled with panic. Just as I was about to enter, the door was abruptly slammed in my face. I stood frozen in surprise as the door slammed shut, leaving me standing outside the gate with loads of heavy grocery bags in my hands. Confusion washed over me as I tried to make sense of the situation unfolding before me. The worried voices of the women continued to echo through the gate, their urgency growing with each passing second. Curiosity and concern compelled me to knock on the door so that I could give a little explanation about the old woman's situation. A few moments of silence followed, and then the door creaked open, revealing a young, beautiful woman with a fear expression on her face. She glanced at me, her ombre eyes filled with apprehension. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I'm the lady who brought your grandmother," I stammered. She hesitated for a moment and was about to hand her the bags, but suddenly her eyes went wide before slamming the door shut again without a word. I blinked incessantly, wondering what was wrong with them. "Not even a simple thank you," I grumbled. As I looked down at my hands full of bags, I pondered what to do with them. Should I leave them here, hoping they would retrieve them later? But what if birds or other animals eat them? I wondered aloud. Still contemplating what to do, a sleek, imposing black car suddenly appeared and approached the massive gate. The windows were tinted, obscuring the view inside. The gate slowly began to open on its own. Despite my fatigue from lugging these bags, I sprinted in front of the car, causing it to screech to a halt, startling the birds perched in the trees. Peering through the windshield, my gaze locked with a dark, brown-haired man wearing sunglasses. There was no mistaking that his eyes, hidden behind those shades, were fixed on me. He removed them, opened the driver's door, and stepped out and marched over to me. I stood there in awe as he towered before me, dressed entirely in black and smelling amazing. He exuded an aura of strength and vitality. His eyes, a piercing shade of ombre, were complemented by his chiseled jawline. His hands were remarkably large. He appeared flawless, almost like a fallen angel, but there was an unmistakable air of hell about him. He was the most strikingly handsome man I had ever encountered in my life. Before I could explain myself, he brought out his hand on my head, and before I knew what he was doing, he pushed me on the ground out of his way like a piece of trash. Shocked, I looked at him. Are fucking serious? I snapped at him. He looked unbothered by my snap because he just walked back in his car. I slowly rose up from the ground, stained in dirt. Suddenly the small gate opened, and the old woman came out running while calling Athena's name as that beautiful woman followed suit. I was now tired of her. When she reached where I was, she clamped her mouth in shock. "Did you get in trouble again because of me?" she whisper-cried. Her grandson got out of the car and asked firmly, "What are you doing out here?" The old woman grabbed my hand and pulled me with her to her grandson or son, only God knows. She looked up at him and said, "Don't be harsh on her. It's me who you should blame, for I begged her to accompany me to the human side." "Stop there," he said to the old woman gravely, and she immediately stopped talking. No one wouldn't, though, not to that tone he used. There was a silence between them. Two tall men emerged from the big gate, and silently one of them carried the old woman on his shoulder, as the other one took the beautiful woman whose face had already turned pale. When they all disappeared, he turned to me. I won't deny, he looked hot and handsome, his eyes piercing through me to my deepest core. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice rough but soothing. "Keilah," I replied without hesitation. He gave me a long, emotionless stare. Without saying another word, he pulled out his wallet and took out almost all the money, his eyes never leaving mine, and I knew right away the money was getting offered to me. I came back to my senses from his charming beauty and stopped him before he handed me his money or threw it to me. I had already faced enough embarrassment from you. I did my part of bringing the old woman safely home. Now I'll excuse myself out of here," I said, turned and walked towards the waiting taxi. I hopped inside the car and closed the door, reminding myself not to turn around. However, as soon as I sat down, I found myself glancing back at him. The guy was still standing there, seemingly lost in his own thoughts. Suddenly, he shifted his gaze towards me, catching me off guard. Startled, I quickly averted my eyes away, my heart racing. I scolded myself for my reaction. But in a brief moment of silence, I remembered the way he had looked at me, a mix of fear and rage. "What a jerk," I murmured, wondering if he knew I was looking at him. The taxi driver caught my attention and said, "He's handsome, right?" I responded with a confused, "Huh." He appears to be new around here. All the years I've been in this business of taxi driving, I've never seen his face before. He said, and shot me a look through the side mirror and said, "You're drawn to him." "You're wrong, sir. I'll never be drawn to that piece of trash. Did you see what he did to me? Instead of thanking me for bringing his mother, or whoever she is, safely to their house, he just pushed me on the ground. Not only that, he was about to throw money in my face. Like, what the heck?" I grumbled, not realizing I overreacted. The taxi driver shot me another long stare before saying, "I witnessed everything and noticed how you were blushing. However, I have some advice for you. Stay away from that man. He poses hell." Before I could respond, the taxi lost control and crashed into a tree, causing me to hit my head repeatedly. Glancing at the driver, I saw that he was bleeding from his head, but still conscious enough to speak. What was that thing?" His words were cut short as a huge wolf broke the car window, dragged him out, and bit his head off. The terrifying scene momentarily left me speechless until the wolf turned its eyes on me. I let out a piercing, non-stop scream while desperately calling for help. I stared in horror as the wolf circled my side of the door, its one menacing gray eye piercing me. Heavy breaths escaped its mouth, drooling slimy blood. Trembling, I closed my eyes and began repenting my sins to God. Before I could finish my prayer, the wolf smashed through the car window. I felt its slimy face against my skin, praying for a painless death. As the wolf's hot, rancid breath brushed against my skin, my heart pounded furiously in my chest. Fear consumed every inch of my being as I braced myself for the inevitable death. Just as the wolf's jaws were about to close around me, a deafening gunshot echoed through the air, causing the wolf to recoil in surprise. I turned my head, expecting to see a hunter or a savior, but instead, I saw a man figure all in black standing by the shattered car window. It was him, his hand still smoking from the gun he held. I tremulously exhaled, feeling thankful to the heavens for this man who had saved me from the clutches of death. With a swift motion, the man stepped forward, pushing the wolf away from me. His presence seemed to command authority, and the wolf cowered before him. It was as if he possessed some kind of superpower, a connection to the wild that allowed him to control even the most ferocious creatures. As the wolf retreated deep into the forest, the man turned his attention towards me. His gaze is unpredictable. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice croaky. I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. "Thank you. I thought I was going to die." "Suit yourself. Now go back to wherever you came from and never set foot here again," he said dismissively before walking away. I couldn't believe this man. Is he for real? How could he leave a vulnerable woman alone who was barely able to walk after that shocking encounter? My legs were still trembling with fear. I quickly exited the ruined cab, hoping to catch up with him and avoid encountering another monstrous wolf. However, my shock intensified when I realized he had vanished without a trace. Panic surged through me. In a hushed tone, I called out for him to return, but my pleas fell on deaf ears. Raising my voice was out of the question, as it could attract more wolves or other dangerous animals. I stood there, stunned by his callousness. How could someone be so heartless? It was clear that he had no regard for anyone other than himself. Anger welled up inside me, but I quickly pushed it aside, focusing instead on getting myself out of this shit before it gets too dark. I took a few steps and suddenly tripped, causing me to fall onto a soft surface. As I looked down to see what I'd fallen on, I was horrified to discover the headless body of the taxi driver. My hand instinctively landed on the ruined, bloody neck. In a state of panic, I let out a frantic scream that seemed to last an eternity, until I finally ran out of breath and passed out. When I opened my eyes, it was pitch black. My heart was still pounding in my chest, but somehow I found myself on the side of the road. How did I end up here? As this question lingered, I noticed a car approaching. Swiftly, I rose to my feet and waved my hand to get its attention. The car slowed down, its headlights illuminating my disoriented figure. As it came to a stop, the driver's side window rolled down, revealing a concerned face peering out at me. "Are you okay?" a voice called out from within the car. "Do you need help?" Relief washed over me as I realized that I had finally found someone who could help me out of the danger zone. I hurriedly approached the car, grateful for the chance to escape the mysterious darkness that had enveloped me. The car doors unlocked, and I didn't wait for her to tell me to get in. Once inside, I almost gasped at how late it was, according to the car's clock. 10:26 p.m. That meant I'd been unconscious for 3 hours. It was unsettling that I didn't wake up in the forest, lying on a dead body. I shivered. The entire ride was quiet, and I wondered why the woman hadn't asked me any questions about how I ended up alone on the roadside late at night, especially considering she had seen my condition. I had blood on me, which should have prompted someone to inquire about what had happened, but she remained silent and steady, like a rock. After a while of driving in silence, she brought the car to a stop in the town center. For the second time, she spoke up, saying, "Whatever happened back there, don't tell anyone about it. And most importantly, don't go back there." I was stunned and replied, "Excuse me, what?" She interrupted, "You may leave now." I watched in shock as she turned the car around and drove in the opposite direction from where we came. But that's not the case. It's what she had said. She repeated the exact words spoken by that unsettling, creepy man. How can they expect me to remain silent after witnessing such a tragedy? Someone lost their life, and it is highly likely that he has a family. It is imperative that I inform the police so they can locate the victim's relatives. Without hesitation, I made my way to the nearby police station. As soon as the officers saw the distress on my face, they swiftly sprang into action. I wasted no time in recounting everything that had occurred in the forest. The police reacted promptly and escorted me back to their vehicle. Naturally, I had to guide them to the exact location. When we arrived, the officers kindly opened the car door for me. I requested that one of them stay close by as we ventured into the woods where the damaged cab and lifeless body were supposed to be. However, to my astonishment, I came to an abrupt stop when I discovered nothing. "Miss Keilah, can you please lead us?" one of the officers said, though his words barely registered in my overwhelmed state. It was here," I stammered, my voice trembling. "What?" the officer asked, clearly confused. "The car," I managed to say, pointing to the empty space. "It was here. And the taxi driver's body was over there." The officer looked at me skeptically. "Are you playing games with us, miss?" "No, I swear," I pleaded. "The body was right there. I tripped over it and fainted out of fear, and the taxi was there. I was inside it." "It doesn't make sense," I wondered, furrowing my brows. "How can a car just disappear like that?" "Exactly," the officer said before adding, "Miss Keilah, do you realize what you're doing can result in jail? You brought the busy officers all the way here just to play around." "I'm not playing around," I pleaded. "Please believe me. There's a big wolf here. It attacked us and killed the driver." The officers looked at me as if I were crazy. I felt a wave of despair wash over me that I wanted to cry. However, one of them seemed to notice my distress. "I can't believe this," he muttered. Grabbing my face, he forced me to look at the empty space. "Look carefully." "Do you see any sign of a crushed car?" he asked. He was right. Despite the confusion, there were no trails or evidence of anything, not even the shuttered glasses. Tears escaped my eyes as I realized the gravity of the situation. "We need to return to the police station because she has a lot of explaining to do," they said and took my hand to lead me back, but we all stopped when we heard a menacing growl. "Did you hear that?" they asked each other. "We have to leave. I couldn't finish the word wolf before the wolf emerged from the trees, growling with its eyes glowing in the darkness. It was black and larger than the white one. "We're done for," I muttered. "What in the world is this thing?" one of them exclaimed, his eyes wide. They grabbed their guns and started shooting at it, but the bullets seemed to have no effect. I watched as it leapt towards us, knocking down all the officers. Before I could even consider running, it was too late. I stumbled as the wolf turned to face me, fear gripping my body. "Stay away from me," I stammered, crawling backwards. The wolf towered above me, snarling and breathing hotly into my face, causing me to shudder. At the same time, that handsome, creepy man's voice echoed in my head again, this time in an angry tone, saying, "I told you not to come back here." I quickly turned my head, scanning the area for the man, hoping he had come to save me once more. But he was nowhere to be seen. That's when I realized that today was the day I would die. The thought of dying without a fight surged within me. I jabbed my fingers into the wolf's eyes. As it staggered, its paw came in contact with my skin. The pain was excruciating, but I had to do whatever I could to survive. Summoning every ounce of courage, I dug my teeth deeper into its fur, piercing its skin. It let out a guttural growl, a mixture of pain and fury. I could taste the metallic tang of blood in my mouth, a stark reminder of the brutality of this encounter. As the wolf continued to struggle, I knew I had to act swiftly. With one final surge of strength, I released my grip on its limb and pushed myself away. The wolf, disoriented and wounded, staggered backwards, momentarily stunned by the unexpected turn of events.